Public participation. Do we have any public participation?
I did not receive any requests. Like, any at all. And needless to say, by 3 p.m. on the deadline date.
Okay. Moving forward, we will get to the approval of the minutes. If folks have an opportunity to look at the minutes carefully and ensure that things are ready to go.
Yes.
I did.
I did.
I wrote it.
Yeah. Good job.
And I edited it.
And I edited them.
I do have one question about them.
Please.
And I wasn't, I'm sorry that Claire's not here, or she,
No.
my memory is that she wanted to be sure that the paint was non-toxic or non-polluting.
That's in the
It's
minutes.
in the minute.
It doesn't, it says if possible.
Oh,
And so I just wanted to clarify that.
Good catch.
At least that's where I read it.
It does say if possible, so I'm gonna have to ask the commissioners then for clarification, because I heard the response back from the principal that she was very sensitive to that. And that she would, do all the research that she could and do the best, but I don't, and then I remember Claire goes, okay. So I wasn't, just listening to the tape, wasn't sure if that was a directive or a suggestion that they are considering and that they will try to do, which is what I took. And that's why I put the in, if possible, as a summary. Because remember, we're doing more summary minutes now instead of every word.
it actually doesn't say if possible. The statement says Commissioner Johnson's yes vote is provisional on non-toxic paint being used. So I think it covers, did you?
Oh, okay, I think the summary right before that says uses language if possible, so that, I just need
And I'm gonna
clarification.
ask you,
Yeah.
Julia, and your guys' interpretation of that conversation.
I'm fine with what's here based on the vote.
That's what I read too. That's what I remember it being.
So if folks want to look at the minutes, it's letter G, item B. I'm sorry, 1B. The last statement says her vote is provisional, and then I guess in the summary it talks about if possible.
And so I guess I just wonder what that means then, if her vote is provisional, is our vote as a whole provisional, or where are we with this?
Well, we didn't clarify that at the time. Sometimes a moment too soon to realize is often a moment to regret. But we have an opportunity now to stand behind that statement, potentially. Just by directing staff. Doesn't mean that they have to do it, but we're having a conversation and they're listening.
I think it's a very good point that she makes, and I would just like it to be something that we satisfy, a requirement that we satisfy.
Maybe a
But I don't
strong-
know where it goes in the minutes, or if we have to
Yeah.
bring it up separately,
Just, I think if staff could just hear that we want a little bit stronger terminology than just if possible.
Well, what I would ask you guys is that when you gave your yes vote, were you including that in your yes vote? Because we can't, when the object isn't reopened,
I
it
hear-
has
I
to
hear
be the clarification of what you guys did that night.
Right, and I hear what you're saying. I'm just hoping that you're hearing what we're saying. What more can we do?
Yeah.
Michael?
I mean, what we're doing now is discussing the minutes, right? And so do the minutes reflect what happened in the meeting, I think is the issue.
Yeah.
And I feel like the minutes do reflect what happened in the meeting.
Absolutely, they definitely do. We just nitpicking.
So then we should approve the minutes as presented.
We can, unless Sandra wants to make an alteration in her wording. But I think that they can be accepted as presented, as long as staff has an open ear to our conversation.
And I am happy to accept the minutes as written. I just needed that clarification. My memory was that it was not an if possible, but
We could have,
but it sounds like I may have conflated Claire's vote
right.
with the overall consensus. So I accept the minutes then.
Okay, so you move. Is there a second? Did you want a second?
I'll second.
Okay. So it moved and seconded to approve the meeting minutes as presented. All in favor, say, or any discussion? Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? The motion carries, the minutes are approved. Thank you. Announcements.
First announcement is
Yes.
by Susan Hardeman.
Yes, thank you. We have 5 new traffic cabinets that we're going to ask and invite the commissioners to vote on in late February. And we have one at Fox Glen and East Butler, and we were going to ask Michael Cruz and Commissioner Chris Farrell. And Sunnyside, Northwest, and Thorpa, we were going to ask Anthony Garcia and Matt McGrath. And then we have 3 locations at different intervals at Eula Boulevard. So I will send out personal invites for each of the locations, and hopefully we'd love to have you serve to help pick out the artists for the new artist reps.
Is the goal to have 2 commissioners on each?
Yeah,
Yeah.
preferably, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I should have stated
the,
that.
the last 3 will be one panel. And I believe we have Commissioners Johnson and
Tina.
Commissioner Zecker targeted.
Targeted.
Yeah, right.
Well, so I'm happy to serve however you need me. I will most likely be working with the students on those, so it might be a conflict of interest for me to be on that subcommittee, so maybe I should be on a different one.
Okay.
I don't know, that's what.
No, that is very
that's
well.
fair.
Okay.
Yes, could be an issue. I had overlooked that. So, okay, we will put our heads together, but look forward to, invitations to be on those selection panels. And, we're anticipating they'll be meeting second half of February.
Right.
So anyway, now that we have staff, we're going forward.
We're trying.
Butler and Fox Glen is my neighborhood, but if you need me to take Tina's, I'm happy to make the switch.
Okay.
I'm sure that she would do a good job selecting panels for my
Are you
neighborhood.
Yeah, that's not bad.
I know where you
Good
live.
switch. Thank you.
I don't think it's a switch. I think it's that Tina's going to be getting her students to apply to all of them.
Oh,
to all of
them.
them.
Oh, well, I thought we were
so
focusing on.
Maybe Vice Chair Lebarski's gonna wanna serve on another panel.
I can do all of them.
Yes.
Okay,
Would it be a conflict?
We're gonna just be above board. It's best to be, appearances can be sometimes worse than actual.
Right.
right.
It's the optics.
Right. Okay, so the next announcement is mine. Just wanted to let you all know that our in-person interviews for the applicants for art collections and beautification coordinator will be this Friday. I interviewed, along with Dave McIntyre, our community investment director, 6 candidates, and 4 are going to interview. What a great set of applicants we have. I just want to say that some of the recruiting was that some of the departments have had is not us. Apparently people want to work for us. So that's really great. And so really excited. And any one of the 4, I believe, could fulfill the position. So that's a really great place to be in.
Hey, Jenna, I was wondering, is there any space in that, I guess in that arena for, BPAC commissioners to sit in just to see who, or community members to sit in.
I don't know if that's allowed for interviews. Chair Cruz is one of the selection panelists. We always have a member of BPAC, either chair or vice chair, be one of, the people who interviews. I would have to double check with HR. I've never.
Please do and let me know. Thank you.
Okay. Will do. Okay. Now the other announcement that I had is that I have a request to take item H1 before item G1. So the first discussion item to accommodate our accountant's schedule. It has to do with childcare, so, and deadlines and picking up.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Do we need to do anything to reorder the agenda? Okay, that's fine. And then any announcements from the commissioners?
So quiet now.
Quiet tonight, yes.
Hearing no announcements, we'll move forward to our first discussion item, which is a 5-year plan and budget process. Gretchen is here, and this is just a discussion item.
Hi, Gretchen.
Hi, everyone.
Everyone remembers Gretchen from our retreat. She attended a retreat, but you can reintroduce yourself. I do have your presentation if you want me to go ahead and forward it. Or
Would you be okay if I just say next slide and move it along?
yes.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Thank you for letting me go first. I have daycare issues, so I appreciate being put near the beginning. Hope everyone's doing well. I'm going to give you guys a presentation on the budget process and the 5-year plan. Just want to let everyone know that this is my first year with the city of Flagstaff, so I started in May, and this process starts in October, November, so I have not been here for this process yet, but I'll give you as much information as I can. And before we go to the first slide, I just want to say that budgeting is an everlasting evolving process which reflects community needs and priorities. Through the efforts of the City Council, employees, and under strict state and federal laws for accounting and reporting for a municipality, the budget is adopted. Though the city prepares and adopts a budget for the fiscal year, which is July through June, the budget process includes forecasting 5-year plan perspective. I'm sorry. The budget process includes forecasting 5 years forward with a 6 to 10 year long range view. Capital improvements require a multi-year perspective. The intent for this method of budget management is to address short-term planning and to help ensure the long-term viability and strength of the city. Now, if you could go to the next slide, please.
All right, hold on one second. We're trying to make it so that you can see it. So hopefully you can now.
I only see the first page.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay.
That maybe you should be good.
Sorry.
Hold on a second.
Okay. Now I'm taking this information from our annual budget retreat transcript. If I were to read the whole transcript verbatim, it would take about like 45 minutes. So I just took little snippets of what I felt was important.
Okay, Gretchen, hold on one second. We're having
Okay.
trouble screen share. 'Cause I don't know.
Okay. Yep, I can see that now.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so here is our master calendar. And let's see. So it's broken into different, oh, if you could go back up.
Okay.
Okay, different categories. There's retreats, reports, priority-based budgeting, personnel, operating capital, and capital improvement projects. What I've done is I've highlighted first the budget module available for data entry, meaning that the budget, that it's now open. So it opened November 28th. Also highlighted today's due date, which is personnel worksheets due to finance. Those are for existing employees. So, but going to the next slide, we'll go to the next month, starting January. So starting in January, new personnel requests are due to HR by January 3rd. By January 10th, I've highlighted the CIP program updates. This is when the capital improvement programs need to be updated in the system, and that's what the BPAC will mostly be involved in. And then from that point, then us accountants have a couple of weeks to finalize the 5-year plans. And then the council retreat the first retreat is February 2nd and 3rd. And then new personnel and new funding and the base budgets are put into the budget entry by February 10th. You could go to the next slide, please. And then division review is February 21st to March 10th. Carry forwards, I'll go over that later, but those are due by April 14th. Council budget session, again, is April 27th to 28th, and then the final adoption will be the July 3rd. Next slide, please. Great. Okay, so I've included the purpose of the annual budget. Basically, it's demonstrating financial operating plan consistency and documentation, indicates short-term organizational-wide initiatives, presents long-term non-financial goals and objectives, report performance measures, present information using a specific fund structure. The list of current funds is available on the shared drive, presents major revenues, capital expenditures and their related operational impact, debt structure, other planning processes used for budget direction, and the goals, objectives, programs, projects, and services as presented. Next slide. Okay. The focus for all divisions should be on the city's mission, vision, values, and the city's strategic plan, which I've included the websites for your information. Right, next is the carry forwards. So in layman's terms, basically what this means is for all capital projects that were budgeted for this fiscal year, if those were not completed, then the department is responsible for carry forwarding the expenses to the next fiscal year. They do not automatically get budgeted for the next fiscal year. So as when we go through the 5-year plan, you'll see that there's a lot of projects. And so that for those projects that were not completed, it's very important that the department carry forward those budgets if you want to continue having a budget for those projects.
Right, we have lots of carry forwards.
Yes, I can.
Our middle name.
That's our middle name, carry forward.
Right, I know. And I want you guys to just spend. So,
Right, we're
okay.
fine. Doing our best.
Okay, the budget review will consist of review of new personnel. This is what accountants are responsible for, is reviewing new personnel requests and associated offsets, verification of base budget amounts, review of new funding requests and one-time and ongoing, review of capital and grant budget items, review of interdivisional service requests, discussion of new, changed, increased, or decreased revenue sources, valuation of strategic priorities, objectives, and measures, and determination of issues needing additional information for council presentation. All right. The division is responsible for ensuring budgets are reviewed frequently. New expenditures are authorized only with available funding, and any significant changes to the adopted budget must be communicated in writing to the accountant and the budget team. Based upon the nature of the change, you will receive additional guidance to manage the budget deviations. All right, here's the fun part. So this is FY23 5-year plan. So if you look in the column that says budget 2022 to 2023, it's right in the middle that's outlined. That this first slide is the summary. So the beginning balance is this is an estimate because I don't have the actuals from FY22, but 8.8, almost $8.9 million is what this fund has available. And then we add the revenues. And so the total fund balance would be 10.9 million if we didn't have expenses. Now if moving down, we have the expenditures. The capital expenditures budgeted for FY23 was 5.2 million. So the total expenditures is 6 million. That includes personnel operating expenses. And then also we have transfer outs. For example, those transfer outs from the general fund are like personnel expenses for maintaining some of the beautification projects. So
We spend money to parks because parks is generally
Yeah.
in charge of our maintenance.
right. And so if we were to spend all that capital, then the ending fund balance for this fiscal year would be 4.4 million. If you want to go to the next slide.
You'll see we have so many carry forwards. We're not spending $5.2 million.
Yeah. So I just basically went over this, but it breaks it down by the source of funds. And then the next slide, if you don't mind, is the use of funds, which is the operations and transfer outs. So this breaks it down a little bit more detail with the use of funds, shows how much is budgeted for personnel, contractuals, commodities, and all the other subjects. Now, the last slide is my favorite slide to look at, and I apologize it's small, but you guys have so many capital projects. This is what it looks like. So again, this middle column is what is budgeted this fiscal year. And if you look at the bottom, the third line from the bottom, it totals 5.2 million. So this is where we need the BPAC to help us with prioritizing, figuring out what is important. So these are all the projects that are budgeted over the next 5 years. Because if you look at the top columns, 23, 24, all the way to 26, 27, those are projects that are budgeted in out years. So
we have lots of projects we've been carrying over for many years, like the city lawn, the 350,000, because we haven't been able to start it. It was supposed to start like 3 years ago, and we know it's not going to start for another probably 2 years, but so we're carrying over each time, and we have a lot of projects like that, and that's why our capital projects in this year is total 5.2 million. But
and you're also saving for
and then
things like the Rio and stuff.
right, and then there's money, right, and then but as Gretchen was, of course, part of our budget retreat where we did our prioritization, and I haven't yet started plugging those in, but that's what I'll be doing, is taking those prioritizations and plugging it into this document.
Yeah, great. So those are all the projects listed as they are now. And the annual budget and all the financial plans are located on the city's website. So under that website. So you can always refer back to these numbers if you need to. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, what happens to the interest on the money that we don't use? Does the city keep that?
Stays in the fund.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, right. Mhm.
Yes.
I had a similar or something, kind of based on the same idea. Is there a metric for that, that I just missed inside the budgeting that shows what kind of interest we're accruing on saved money?
I'm not sure how, if you go back to, yeah, that one right there, investment earnings. I'm not exactly sure about how much we invest, but when yeah, I don't know. I can get back to you where those might come from, but usually they're more than what we budget. Yeah, because what happens is we have many funds, and so all those funds go into investments, and then they divide it up. I don't know exactly how they divide up or where the investments are.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Gretchen?
I have a question for you and Dave. I don't know if it's for you as well, but in terms, I mean, I feel actually a little hesitant asking this insofar as the department, the program has expanded in terms of employees recently
Yes.
to a great extent. But with this pile of money and with the overwhelming number of projects, what's the overall vision for, I mean, would it be possible to even hire additional people?
Yes. And potentially that will be a direction that we try to go in the future. It's so we've already, we went from basically less than 1.4, I think, to 3. And I think that will make a big difference. Some of that money is also there because we had some major projects that got stopped, right? And so when you save up a whole bunch of money for a 4th Street corridor, I can't use this excuse forever because now we're years later, but we've also had some transition. But we did have some large projects that have been stopped. We've also had a number of projects that folks have been wanting to wait for, things like the Rio. And so we've sort of been saving in some places, and then in other places we've been like, oh, well, now we have 1.4 million. How do we spend that? And then we have a staff transition, and so we've been unable to kind of work through all of that. That being said, I think with the staff that we're going to have, a lot of that can happen. We've also done some work with getting capital improvements for a while. Many of you, actually, I don't think most of you will remember this, but there was a while where we didn't do much with capital. Christine's on here. We actually managed all our own projects. And so one of the ways that we're trying to increase the number of projects that we manage is by having capital engineers deliver a lot of them, but we still have staff that are required to be that owner representative. So we're also looking at working with ADOT, letting them do projects with Jana's guidance. So what we've been trying to do is over the last few years, figure out how do we spend this money compliantly and effectively while providing the proper level of oversight and not necessarily hiring like 5 more people and then having the BBB tax. I mean, generally they frown on you just like way staffing up when we really know that there's an incremental amount that comes in. Right now we're gaining 44,000 in income. Is our projection for that's interest for just the beautification fund, not even arts and sciences. So we know we've done a lot in the last few years about trying to figure out how to build that capacity to deliver. We still have not brought that fund balance down as much as I would like to have. And there's still ways to continue to do that. One of the problems though is if we try to budget at that sort of $5 million level, we know we can't deliver that fully. And we hit what's called the expenditure cap, which you've heard talked about a couple of times, where the city, because of all the stormwater projects and the other all the road projects, and because of all the beautification projects, all being budgeted, we're actually bumping up against these state requirements that we don't spend more than a certain amount. So what they're saying is, rather than put in a big list that takes into account all the money that you have, put in what you think you're going to be able to accomplish. So that is what some of the guidance that you've been hearing from us is. Now we can figure out how to try to accomplish that in many ways. Like I said, bringing in ADOT and just figuring out how to patch into them, working with Capital, paying their engineers, because Capital, just so you guys know,
They
they
charge.
charge us out. We also, I think, bringing in the collections manager that you guys are getting, that person's gonna be half delivering projects, half bringing us into a whole new system. Is that gonna be enough to really work through the beautification and public art funding? You know, we'll see in this next year, and if we wanna put another one forward, we can. I don't wanna get so far out in front of it that we end up with a whole bunch of staff and then the money is gone. That puts us all in an awkward space, and I'd rather it go to projects than more staffing, as a general philosophy. But yes, if it turns out that even with 3 FTEs and all these other changes, we're still not bringing that fund balance down, then rather than have money that's not going to the benefit of the public, we'll look at what these other staffing changes could be. We'll talk to council about what they'd like to do. I know there have been calls to open the BBB, I don't know if you saw, I just got tense thinking about it. Open the BBB allocation up and maybe change those percentages. I think that is a difficult conversation because there are requirements, because BBB is a tourism funded tax. There are a lot of requirements about how that money can be used. And a whole lot of people would be interested in finding ways to use it for their special ideas. So it makes me a little nervous to go down that road, although we know there's going to be an election in the not too distant future and I'll wrap up in a second, I promise, to decide whether to renew that tax. So at that time, there'll be conversations about, whether the percentages are right. At the moment, what we're doing is making all sorts of changes incrementally to figure out what's the right staffing level and the right way to deliver projects that meets all these needs. And I know, like I said, we've made a lot of changes, but your numbers are still big.
Yeah, I was gonna, add the balance with using capital projects, which we used on the library entry. So capital projects does the project management aspect. So oversees all the permitting, just a lot of different things. And then that leaves our managers free to just manage the public art process and not have to manage, the overall project. And so like Switzer Canyon Roundabout is something that, in a way, we could do, but we're gonna have capital projects step in so that it doesn't take up, all of our time. But the problem here is that capital projects has lots of demands on them, and they have to have staff available, and they've got projects, for everyone in the city. And so I can't tell them,
Right.
oh, you're gonna do this project, and this project for them. I have to go ask them, right? And say, this year, what projects can you do with us?
Can I have one more piece too?
Yes, you may.
There's also something that's happened recently, which is sort of a funny thing, is that Jana has helped teach us how to do public process better and more inclusively, right? And I think the commission's been really excited about that. I know council's been really excited about that. That actually takes longer.
Right.
It's something that as somebody who's sort of watching the project delivery, it's like, yes-ish. Because yes, we want best practice. We want it inclusive. We want it diverse. We want all the awesome things that are the city's values and this commission's values and the council's values. It takes longer to do a project right. And that has been a little bit of a challenge because, a few years back when we restructured this section, we overestimated how much we'd be able to turn. And that's not a question of how awesome our staff's been. I think we've hired amazing people and they've been doing amazing work. It's that we've also learned how to do things a little bit better, taking guidance and feedback. And to be honest, there's been huge things like COVID and staffing changes in finance and procurement, which just all of these things happen in a big process that involves folks that are not on our team as well. And so there's always these pieces. I sound like I'm making excuses. When it comes down to it, I think we have a great setup right now. We certainly could hire again if we are ready. I don't believe, I anticipate asking for a new position in this next round. I think we need to get the new position that we have stood up properly, the collection system in place properly, our team's super solid, see what starts to happen now that we have this stable setup. And then, yeah, if it feels right for that next cycle, then we can come back to council and say, we'd like another person because we can deliver that much more. But right now, there's also that question of like, how do we get dialed in with what we've got? I know that was a really long and complicated answer.
And very
but
helpful.
yes,
Thank
I will
you
say
so
that.
much. And I just want to, I think you guys are doing such a superb job. And I just want us to know, to be able to campaign on your behalf
Thank you.
too. And have a sense of where, what your needs are, because I feel like you're accomplishing so much.
I will say some of the big projects that are coming will take that fund balance down a fair amount. I don't see this lasting forever.
Yeah, we can't wait for the library to charge us. Take that money out. Take that $700,000 out, please.
And David, don't sell yourself short. I mean, I didn't see you making any excuses. What I saw was transparency and a better understanding for all of us. When staff steps in, I know sometimes we can bristle and sometimes we can go back and forth on what is right, what isn't. But if we don't have the information and if we're also not being transparent, then we can't work together. And I appreciate that.
I think the thoroughness of the process is well worth the fact that it takes a little longer. My question though is, when is the BBB tax up for renewal?
So we were just talking about this. There is, I believe it expires if it has not been renewed in 2027. So knowing that we would like to have, we'd have to have it into an election on the 26th. We're hoping to go to election potentially, wait, am I wrong here? 24 is super close. No, so we'll probably be, well, council would have to decide to do this, but staff is anticipating requesting that we go back in 24, so that if there is something that goes wrong with that conversation, we still have another round to go back in 26. If the voters choose not to renew in either 24 or 26, then we will use that fund balance to figure out how to round out.
What does round out mean?
Slowly
Spend it and
figure out
spend it
how
out.
to spend it, and yeah, the BBB is voter approved. If they don't approve it, then it goes away.
That was a nice way to put it.
Thanks. Another reason not to build too much staff capacity, because we want to be able to figure out how to have continuity. I think the public understands the benefit of the BBB. I don't want to make it sound too dire. We certainly, in the next couple of years, we don't get to advocate. Commissioners do, but staff does not.
Right.
So just so you know.
Hint,
I think you'll see your staff working to help create all sorts of educational and talking point items so that the public can truly understand the benefit that BBB presents. But I think a lot of people in the public do get wrapped up in their own lives and not necessarily see all the art and the public benefit that happens. So feel free to help push that information out as we go in the next couple of years.
I actually just want to say, I think the commission should take that on as a, major part of our work to make sure that we help to the public to understand how important that the BBB tax is.
good comment.
Staff would appreciate that. But we're just educating.
So anything else related to budget, folks?
Just a last note is that, of course, I will be bringing back the budget for your approval. Could be January, probably will be February. But well before the council approval. Okay.
Thank you. So let's move forward to the Lone Tree Overpass, and this is an action item. Thank you, Gretchen.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Gretchen. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
There it is. I'm not seeing this, but Are you seeing it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I, while she's setting that up, can I throw out one piece as well, though? Is it that the beautification and the public art programs are indeed separated? You guys probably remember that from the retreat. And it's interesting because beautification has this massive fund balance. Public art does not. And so you will see a lot of, just because of the way the percentages work and the fact that we push a lot of that through into the nonprofit community, while you're speaking this up. And so you've seen that things that could be called public art, but also could be called beautification, have generally been paid out of beautification. And so those are conscious choices, but just as you're thinking through your process and for your information, those funds are not, they're not like funds. There's much different amounts. And so you also see that, for instance, the staff salaries are about 80-20 splits. With the understanding that they're gonna be working in both programs and need them to be, but those funds are separate. Happy to look up information on interest income for public art too, but the 44 is just beautification.
Okay.
Okay.
So beautification is typically 20%, and then our public arts like 7%, but that's kind of down because of the community advocacy or giving creative arts back. Just to get an idea, the 80-20%.
Yeah, I can pull up the,
No, that's cool. You had it at the retreat. I was just killing some time. Everything
that is yeah, it's about right.
All right, so the Lone Tree Overpass Integrated Art Concepts. I have with us today, we have Christine Cameron, the Engineering and Capital Improvements Project Manager. We were just talking about capital, manager, but she's managing the entire project. And indeed, we've set this project up even a little bit differently to allow it to go forward, but we also have Jason Karflades, the structural manager and project manager from WSP. And they'll both be with us on this action item and then the downtown mile beautification and public art opportunities discussion, because both of them are tied to both of those projects. So I welcome them. I'm going to be making the presentation, but they're here to answer any questions about the overall projects. Okay. I'm making the presentation on Lone Tree, but not on the downtown mile. Jason will be making that one. So I just wanted to remind you that, again, to allow this to go forward, if you guys, for those of you who've been on the commission for a long time, this project being active in design caught our program just a little by surprise. We thought it was out a few years, and so a consultant was already hired, and a landscape architect was already hired, and we didn't have staff capacity to actually manage the project. And so we decided to honor our 3 pillars and still get our process in, but to have the artist hired under the city consultant, WSP. And so therefore we did not do our selection panel with 2 of you on panel and a wide, variety of selection panelists from the community. So we weren't able to do that. And, but they did take recommendations from staff, and they interviewed 5 artists. And I think some of you, remember that whole process. So, but we did keep the community input aspect, and then also your approvals and chance to comment on the design. And so I just kind of wanted to, talk with you a little bit about, some of the community forum surveys. I think I've given some more detailed presentations at previous BPAC meetings, but not everybody was there. So one of the things that we did is we did our community survey on Community Forum, and that was back in March of this year. And we put out 14 just kind of general questions. And this was for the answers were for the artist to use and getting a feel for the sense of place. And we had 148 respondents. It was a pretty good response. So 2 questions that were on there is just like, what would your ideal transit to be like on the Lone Tree overpass between Butler and Highway 66. You know, consider whether you're driving, biking or walking, you know, what's more likely for you. Consider where you might be going and what might make the journey pleasant and inviting. And then, you know, just what are special places to in Flagstaff? We asked a lot of questions. And then we did put together a focus group, and Commissioner McGrath and Commissioner Zucker were on it. But we also, again, touched kind of the spots where this project intersects, which it kind of, you know, Lone Tree goes down to NAU. So we had somebody from NAU. Right at Butler is Sawmill Mall with the high-rise residencies. They are, you know, clearly a interested community. Then we have the south side and the connection with a possible civic space in the future that will belong to the south side community that's in the south side plan, but it isn't part of this project, but still that was important. So we had somebody from the south side community on. And then we, you know, then of course, when there's just the Route 66, you know, the intersection, the T up above. So we also had you know, we had an indigenous member on this focus group as well. And then we had an artist who had a studio right underneath, kind of, you know, representing, you know, kind of a cross section of who was impacted. So there I gave my more fun, I think, kind of questions. Like I asked people to rate what the south side, with the NAU campus, what the Foots Trails, which intersects here, the South Sawmill Mall, Route 66. Like I asked them, well, if each of those areas was an animal, you know, what would that animal be? And I think I shared some of the answers with you before, but I just drew on one. You know, somebody represented the south side as a lion because they remain powerful in their quest for the future of their neighborhood and are courageous in what they want to secure for a solid, meaningful future for that neighborhood. NAU campus, you know, maybe, you know, somebody picked an owl, you know, and Foots Trail, gazelle, you know, they're adaptable and the trails represent all those opportunities for runners and adventure. The sawmill, most people put like a designer dog, like a labradoodle. This person put like a raptor. And because she felt that the sawmill identified their market, wasted no time in seizing the opportunities of Flagstaff demographic group to appeal to, and they're strategic and waste no time in achieving their goals. So that, you know, and then Route 66, this person said a cat because they have all these different eclectic personalities, you know, right there on that Route 66. It's an ever-changing, you know, kind of feral landscape. Is kind of how the person, you know, kind of described it. But you can see the answers to those questions gave the artist, you know, a lot of things to deal with.
You never know how to answer those questions.
Now you know. Labradoodle.
Now you know. Yeah. I would say, I think 4 out of the 7 focus groups put a designer dog for the sawmill. I thought that was, yeah, you know, the
And
little,
then some-
little Scottsdale.
Some home brews.
Yeah, it was very funny. So, yeah, this is a complicated project and it's a little bit, I don't think you guys we've done this kind of project here with this commission where we're going, you know, this is aesthetic enhancements. We're dealing with form liners unseen. We're doing with railing. We're just literally integrated into the infrastructure. So it's, you know, so, and as you can see, we have all sorts of walls and all sorts of, you know, barriers and fences and aspects, and it's a little hard to follow, but I think I kind of showed these to different focus group members at an earlier stage, and I think the presentation overall was a little confusing. I think it's a bit better now. I hope you guys can follow me, but don't be afraid to ask questions. So the Lone Tree Overpass basically connects South Side to Route 66 along the Rio de Flag drainage and the B&F Railroad. The artist was tasked with working with the design team to address aesthetic aspects of the overpass construction. The themes she chose are Flagstaff's unique nature. I can't look at my notes now. So I'm gonna have to go to this. That's okay. Flagstaff's unique natural environment, the pedestrian-friendly design of the overpass, the dynamic of the railroad, and the Rio drainage, the heart of the city, which the new overpass crosses. So the overpass elements addressed in this presentation and located on this plan include the retaining walls on the south, which are in the red, and the north in the blue ends of the overpass. The parapet, or the pedestrian safety wall, on the outside edges of the overpass is the orange and dotted white lines. Fencing required by BNSF over the span that crosses their tracks is the kind of dashed purple. That's that kind of in the upper right-hand corner. The piers that support the open bridge spans are dashed yellow. And, you know, so they're underneath. So there's piers that hold it up. So you see those dashed yellows that go across. You have to think of that part being underneath. Okay. And then there's possible entry features located, you know, to the overpass on either side. And she's kind of indicated that with a green star on the left-hand bottom, but it looks like where she puts entry at the top, you know, she's got kind of dark green lines. So you can see already how complicated this is, and we're going to go to each part. All right, so the large retaining walls begin in the south side at Bannon and rise over 30 feet while curving east for 400 feet. The imagery on the retaining walls on the east and west side of the overpass is inspired by the Ponderosa Forest and Flagstaff lumber history. Yellow ochre, burnt sienna, cerulean blue, kind of classic colors that stand the test of time and which are harmonious with the natural environment were chosen as the dominant colors for the project. On the east retaining wall are oversized styled tree patterns inspired by the unique ponderosa bark. The patterns are inset and textured with a vertical linear form liner pattern, which is also between the tree shapes on approximately the first 10 vertical feet. Rustification patterns are repeatable to fit within the construction budget. And these, I know this is a little bit technical speak, but these form liners are standard form liners that can be custom cut versus making a specialized form liner. And then hopefully we're working on costing now, but hopefully that will keep the costs down. And you see at the bottom where you kind of have the extra lines, that is just kind of the ridge rustification, and that is to help with graffiti because it's not flat in between the trees. Okay, which is a very important element whenever you're dealing with cement walls of this kind of size. Then oversized stylized tree rings float on the west wall. The wall connecting the east and west retaining walls under the overpass unites the forest and the lumber motifs. The artist understands that it is the Southside community's wish that this area will eventually become part of the active community space. And so there is a little room left at the top to possibly even add art elements later. There's also ideas of adding basketball hoops and all sorts of things, but again, not part of this project. And we don't know when, when that community space will be going forward, but it isn't part of this project. We're just trying to leave enough space for it to occur in a way that it can occur and maybe be, special, more personalized at that point. The overpass is supported on the north where it connects to Route 66 with a 620-foot long retaining wall along the footpath, and it runs perpendicular to the overpass. A divided route allows access either to the overpass or underneath by bypassing it. So you can kind of see that, so we're talking about the kind of blue line, and you can either take the Fitz Trail over the overpass, or you can kind of, if you're just going around 66, you can kind of do this, cut down and get off of 66 for a little bit. So the mountain makes an appearance on this north retaining wall with rusticated stylized mountain forms in natural concrete with vertical linear form liner and cerulean blue, creating a foreground and background ambiguity. Sandblasted bicycle wheels form randomly as a nod to Flagstaff's bicycle lifestyle. You'll also see a railing to your right here in the lower picture. We don't know that that railing is going to be what's going to be there. It may be a fence. In fact, what I heard last from Christine Cameron was that the railroad was wanting a fence instead of railing. We have to do whatever the railroad says. So just know that I'm presenting to you concepts. There may be tweaks for costs. There, all that. If anything ever radically changes, I bring things back. But minor tweaks, I will update you on them, but not bring them back for approval. But if anything radically changed, I would. But I would just tell you right now that railings is done. So.
Is that not a fence though? How is that? What's the difference between a fence and what you have here?
Well, I'll show you what. Christine, do you want to comment between a fence and a railing?
Yeah, I'm on my phone, so I hope everyone can hear me. Hi, everyone. This is Christy Cameron, project manager with capital improvements. So I think it's the height requirement, and BNSF also doesn't want it scalable. They want it sturdy. I think there's enough to say that we can't look at beautifying or providing some beautification elements to that, but yeah, I don't know, Jay, have any other input on BNSF on that fence separation or?
Yeah, what you're seeing here is a 42-inch pedestrian railing, so it's a little bit lower. It's more the minimum what we can get away with. BNSF is going to require an 8-foot tall fencing, and it's going to be very similar to what's actually going to be on the bridge, is my understanding. So it's going to be a taller fencing element. Some of the artistic elements may still be brought into it, but it's going to be 8 foot tall, not 42 inches tall. So that's going to be the biggest difference.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's a little more.
Right. So something higher and not scale. That makes sense. Thank you.
Slide for a second. I just have a question about design element.
I know it's just not coming from the side. It's like, it seems to be frozen. Now it's back. It's going forward on the laptop, it's just not going forward on the screen. It's totally frozen. So we're working on it, everyone.
Please stand by.
Yeah. Commercials for popcorn. Yes. Here, give me some control.
Can folks on the Zoom still hear us? Is the whole Zoom thing?
It's really choppy. Cutting
It's
it out.
it's very choppy.
Is it choppy for all, when everybody speaks, or just when other folks who are online speak?
No, we were losing Jana for a bunch there.
Okay, thanks.
No,
Okay.
yeah, you guys were a little choppy for us. Okay,
She just talks like that.
it looks like we got it back. Hold on.
We're back.
Oh, yay.
Okay, yay.
Yay.
Vice Chair Lebarsky, what was your question?
No, that you, I mean, I just wonder, you had the design, so the top strip has more detail than
Yes.
than it shows, so.
Yes,
What's the relationship between those two?
well, it's just that the lower one is just, you know, we're using SketchUp, so the detail wasn't possible
Oh,
in
okay.
that
Oh, okay. Thanks.
down below. Yes,
Just my concern was that that's the pedestrian and bicyclists, right? And
right,
I mean, so you're going slowly, you want more detail on
right.
that than, yeah.
Yes. In fact, you know, that is a question and a comment that also came up in the focus group, that maybe, because those wheels are sandblasted in, that maybe maybe there could be even more detail in those pieces because people were going slower. And so that comment does reflect, comments that we heard in the focus group as well. Okay, so on top of the overpass, a parapet wall. And so get used to that terminology. It's got an interior and it's got an exterior. Is shown as an orange line, and it runs the entire length of the overpass on its outer edges. The inside, the dotted white line, is experienced by overpass users. Okay. So the cerulean blue continues on the inside of the parapet wall with silhouettes of pedestrians and bicyclists sandblasted randomly, and like the shadows of the users. And so here's some more examples. The artist also addressed the type of lighting to be used along the corridor. So this kind of inset downward turn lighting that will have some light color as well. And so now we're looking at the exterior of that parapet wall. So it'd be kind of like this area up here. And the section of the parapet wall over the retaining walls, so over where those timber motifs are, will continue the forest theme. So giant pine needles formed in powder-coated steel are attached randomly along these stretches, about 6 inches away from the surface, creating shadows that will move with the sun. And then we look at the parapet wall over the bridge spans. And you're also going to start to see kind of what is more meant by a fence. The parapet sections above the 3 bridge spans that traverse the tracks, the location of the Rio de Flag drainage and the future community space are rusticated and painted with stylized shapes that variously represent terrain and Rio movement. So here's kind of some of, again, remember we're dealing in, you know, rustification and cement. It's you know, these are just broad patterns are what works best. So this 8-foot tall cyclone safety fencing is required by BNSF over their tracks. And the artist impacted the shape of the fencing into a sawtooth design to continue that sense of movement. And the fencing is further activated with imagery inspired by the trains, wind, and clouds. And this was something that very much, it kind of came out of the focus group. So the images are created by a series of many small flags made from Gore-Tex or simple, durable, and color-fast fabric. We're still investigating the materials. You kind of see them next, a little bit more in detail in the bottom right-hand corner. The flags are attached to the outside of the fonts with permanent fittings to flutter in the wind. The spaces between the flags create transparency and allow visibility. And this feature will be mostly visible from the footpath and from Route 66. The artist also, if you remember, probably don't, but in the very first ones, the columns underneath were just kind of straight cylindrical columns. So she asked for these Y-shaped piers to add a little bit more visual interest and support the bridge spans into the activated V shapes. And the piers are rusticated with the shape similar to the train wheel and the movement shape seen on the parapet above with the form liners to add textural interest. And then we have some entry marks. They were, they're not totally solidified on the south side where they might be. They're a little bit more solidified on the north entry. And so location of the entry element from the footpath on the north end and proposed, entry elements on the south side. As the ones on the north will look that are kind of along that, parapet wall. On the north side will be more like in this style design at the top. And the ones on the south side will be kind of more the entire height. So, the pattern will be a bit bigger. And again, this is just kind of this cut, metal pattern that is both references the logs and bicycle wheels and movement. So these are our artistic elements. This is the time for discussion and any questions that you have. And then we do have a motion, and that is to approve these integrated art concepts, the aesthetic enhancement concepts and direction that the artist has chosen to go.
Folks, any comments? Matt, you want to go first since you're with us virtually?
Sure. Thanks, Chair. I want to start by saying I think this has gotten better and better every time I've seen it. And a lot of the things that Jen and I talked about during the last round of revisions, I think have been incorporated and improved. Jenna, the one question I have, and I know I had you explain this to me 6 weeks ago, I still don't really understand the area underneath that may become the community area. I still don't really understand what we're trying to do there, because initially when we spoke last, I think it was just sort of leaving that blank, even though there's no plans for any future work there, but leaving it blank as a nod to the community of recognizing that they were hoping that there would be something there. But now it kind of has a splitting the baby feel to me, where there's some additions to it, but then you say, oh, but part of it is left open for community space maybe later. So I know that there's no firm plans for anything to happen there for the community. Yeah, that's the one there on the top.
Yes.
I'm just kind of trying to understand what that is. Yeah.
It kind of necessarily, maybe you're right. Maybe it is splitting things, but we have, some concern, and this has been, I think, a discussion amongst the city. Christine may want to jump in on this. Given that the number of years that may happen before this turns in a community space gets going, if it was left a completely blank wall, it may be that, it would have to be fenced off to keep it you know, from being graffitied and everything. So by putting the kind of rustification on the bottom and again, with those styrations at the bottom, it kind of protects it from that a little bit as much as possible, just like the rest of the wall. And then yet there is space at the top to, you know, add art later. And there's definitely space. I mean, you could, you know, even as is, you know, you could put in, you know, a basketball court, and it, you know, is put in these kind of colors underneath with, you know, the yellow, you know, the lighter yellow, you know, colors, again, to give it a lively feel under there. I mean, that is the, you know, what we could do for the civic space in the future.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It just seems, I'm struggling to understand what kind of art would, like, it seems like we're committing to the art in that area. And so I don't really see what might get added in the future. That said, that's my only kind of question / criticism. As I said, this has gotten better every time I've seen it. And I like it a lot.
Yeah, there'd just be this large space up above for a large mural.
But the other option would be to just fill it with those circles, right?
All the way up, just like
Right.
the other side.
Right.
But it was thought that if we just had it at least on the lower part, that's what would be the graffiti protection. Yeah, it's a tough call, Commissioner McGrath.
Yep. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a question. Did we have anybody as a staff liaison for any part of this process? Or not staff, commission?
I think Tina and Matt.
Yeah, Commissioner McGrath and I were on that.
And how did you feel about the process? What did you learn about it? Or do you have any comments?
I agree with Commissioner McGrath. We've been through 4 or 5 renditions and groups and discussions about this and individual discussions with Jana, and I feel like it's gotten better every time. And I feel like, I feel like our voice was heard. I mean, I do feel like that South Side has been a very hot topic throughout this entire process, and considering the community voice on that piece is really important. I'm really happy with where it is though right now.
Excellent, thank you.
I'd like to just put in and reinforce the concern about more detail on the pedestrian piece. As a walker, I know how important it is and how it can really draw you to want to walk that area if it's got enough detail, enough interest that really holds your interest. And we really want to encourage that pedestrian use and biking use. So
Thank you, Vice Chair Lebarsky.
I completely agree with you, Sandra. But as a musician, sometimes the rests are more important than the notes. Just something to think about.
that's how you ride a bike.
It's hard to play the guitar and ride a bike. So, and I could be completely wrong about this. Every project gets jumbled together after a certain amount of time. But I'm thinking that this might have been, and this just is for the commission, and I know you guys are tired of me like talking about the past and beating you guys over the head with the same ideal that how important our voice is. But if I'm not mistaken, this is one of 3 possible projects that may or may not have been brought forth by the commission saying, well, why aren't we included in this conversation? So it is, you know, just imperative that we continue to have that same spirit when we look at things that are going on in the community that we have questions about, and just innocently bring that stuff up, because we're not all in the same place. We're not all in the same groups. We don't see the same things. So it's very helpful for us to step in. Thankfully, because we have done this multiple times, now capital improvements is coming to us when the time comes. We heard about that in the retreat. So keep an open mind when you see things out in the community. If you have a question of upcoming projects, please bring them to the table because we can actually make change there. That's it.
I really like the fence and the flags. I thought that was super thoughtful. I really appreciate the detail. I like the color. My issue with the pedestrian thing is I liked that fence. I can certainly appreciate that they want something higher, they want something non-scalable. I've recognized that. And so when I saw the bigger one on the overpass that's angled, then I was glad that they're using the same term. I don't know why I just pictured like some, 8-foot high wooden something, whether it's painted, yeah. So I'm just curious about whether the pedestrian fence could somehow mimic or mirror what goes on top. I really like that design. I can certainly appreciate if the artist doesn't want it to be so matchy-matchy, but I like the colors, I like the design, I like the thoughtfulness about the angle. I like the movement. I just thought that was lovely. Good job.
I do have a question about that fence too, because there was supposed to be lighting under those rails. So is that gonna be lost now?
Might be. Might be. I don't know. I haven't been into the details of, in that, Foots Trail underpass, what kind of lighting would be along there. But yeah, you're right. Those rails especially were, they were also gonna be on top, but now they have a parapet wall. And that's why, and then she put the slot lighting in the wall instead there. But I don't know about the lighting along, if it goes to a fence.
Just like that would be the place you really need the lighting too.
Right.
Hey Janet, this is Jason. We do have underdeck lighting along that path under the bridge, and last I talked to Lori, she would have the same parapet / fence concept, so we could also have the accent sconce lighting under there as a possibility. But there will be sufficient underdeck lighting in general to light that area for pedestrians and cyclists using that pathway.
Yeah.
I'm curious also about the pine needles. Was there something, could we not go with a pine cone versus a pine needle? Pine needles are so,
You talking about the shadow thing?
the thing on the
Yeah.
highway, the overpass.
That's actually the first time we've seen. You talking about
Pine
the
needles.
wall or the shadows? The
Well,
things that are sticking
they're-
out, metal pieces,
It's,
right?
yeah, it's the wall
The
that casts the
projection.
shadow, yeah.
So I
Yeah.
can bring it back.
It's
So
like-
it
it's a
actually was
sculpture.
something different originally. I like
There.
this much better than what it was. This is far more
Right.
like abstract, I
Yeah.
think, to me,
Yes,
than what she
it's-
had.
Interpretation.
It initially was like almost a branch that kind of triangled out, and it just seemed, it seemed sparse, like in this, I don't know, this to me looks a lot more artistic. I like this a lot. What do you think, Commissioner McGrath?
Yes, I was just going to agree with Commissioner Zecker. There have been different concepts for this, and I think this is the best one that we've seen so far. It's the first time I've seen it, but I like it.
It's clearly changed in response to the focus group.
I like the color palette and the thoughtfulness in terms of the trees and everything. I really do like it.
Commissioner Johnson did join the meeting at 4:30, just so you know, Chair.
Great, thank
Oh,
you.
okay, wonderful.
Okay.
Hello.
Are there any comments about this design?
No, I think everyone else has summed this up pretty well. I agree. I like the color palette. I like the pine needles. I like all the designs. I don't have anything meaningful to contribute really.
I also wanted to tell you that we have guests from Camp Verde that are on this meeting as well. And they're very interested in our program and what we do. And we're going to take a little tour with them tomorrow. So they're listening in case you wondered who
Oh,
it is.
nice, welcome.
So greetings.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm Chrissy Clark with the town of Camp Verde, and I absolutely love this whole design. I love the pine needles especially. I think they're my favorite.
Thank you. All right.
So Commission, are we ready to vote?
Beryl, did you have
Um,
anything to say?
I love the pine needles too. They're my favorite part as well. Two thoughts. First of all, I'm thrilled that capital improvements and everyone in the city, that major construction like this has all these beautiful artistic elements. I think that is just fabulous and a testament to the city and what we do. My second thought is just, I find it overwhelming. I haven't had a chance to walk it or digest it, and there's so many different pieces that I just haven't had a chance to really digest it, and I don't know. I don't know what I mean by that.
Commissioner
It's just a
Darrell,
lot
I've
to
seen it
take in.
like 7 or 8 times. This is the first time in all of those times that I've seen it that I actually feel like I know where everything is. It's taken me that many times. Every time I'm like, I have no idea what's
I
going on.
also love that we finally organized it a little bit better. It is difficult. It's difficult. You can't see
It's a
it,
good
you know,
explanation.
but it's very big. And, when you're at a distance from it, you're going to see it very differently than these up close kind of pictures. I mean, you're going to be driving by it in a car. You're going to,
Yeah, and trying to figure out whether I'm a pedestrian or a bicyclist or a motorist, and I'm on one section or another section, and out of
Are
those
you down?
sections.
If you feel like being rebellious, breaking the law a little bit, I've been out there and walked, because you're on private property, BNSF, like you're not supposed to be there, but I've walked that whole area, like just to get an idea, like a site plan idea. If you're interested in that.
Staff does not endorse this.
On a site visit, I'll show you my tour.
I'll go with you on all the legal parts. I really will.
That's so cool.
However,
But yeah, no.
However, if any commissioner wants to know exactly where it's gonna go, and where it's gonna hook up into, Route 66, and at least stand up there and kind of look over, I'm happy to meet you out there. And,
Ooh,
maybe
we
you
should
want to
do
do it
that.
in the spring or something like that when it's a little warmer, or maybe you want to do it now with a windy,
Yeah, it's fun.
cold day, but it isn't absolutely, when you're up on 66, fantastic point to look down and see a kind of scape. I think when you're going over this bridge, going southward, it's, northward, you're gonna have the incredible peaks, and southward, you're gonna have the sky dome and this whole beautiful openness in front of you of this actual town, city.
And something that wasn't in the presentation tonight that I'm excited about is the accommodations for cyclists and pedestrians over off of Route 66 as you turn this corner, and the way that whole corner is being situated. It's pretty impressive, the thought that they put into it.
Yeah, I want to say, Jason's team has put so much thought into the bicycle and pedestrian amenities. And I know that we're not here to talk about all of those, but there's been a lot of attention. I know there's a lot of interest from council on that as well. And the intersections have been reconfigured throughout this process based on comments to include all of that.
And I just wanted to suggest a friendly suggestion, since you did so much work on this. Why don't you do the motion?
I move to approve this for recommendation to city council, the artistic design.
Any second?
That was good.
I'll second.
Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the design as presented and recommend to city council for their approval. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? The motion carries and the design will be recommended for approval. Thank you, folks. Up next is the Downtown Mile Beautification and Public Art Opportunities.
Okay. I think this is up, Jason is going to share his screen. Is that correct, Jason?
Good, Jan. I was going to do a little bit of an intro for the group just to bring them up to speed on work we've done. So the Downtown Mile, it's a cooperative project between the city of Flagstaff and BNSF Railway, and it will construct several of our local capital projects that cross the rail corridor that have been in planning for quite a while. These are pedestrian undercrossings, the Rio de Flag, and the New Milton Bridge. And the project will also realign and upgrade the BNSF track through downtown. This is something that we've been working on for a while, trying to figure out concept design and feasibility. And this past year, we entered into a US DOT infra grant application with BNSF for construction funding. That happened in May, and we were notified in September that we were awarded the grant. And so it provides about 33 million in federal dollars, and the city is bringing in 12.6 million in matching funds, and BNSF is bringing in 11 million in matching funds. So full engineering design is underway, which will take the next 14 months, give or take. And we'll be coordinating with Jana, as she integrates the public art components, into the project. I'll go ahead and hand it over to Jason to walk you through and kind of show you the project elements in his exhibit he has, so you get an idea of where they sit in space in downtown. And he can also point out some of the opportunity areas that we've been discussing with Jana for the beautification and public art components. So thank you, and Jason, go ahead and take it away. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Christine, and thank you, commissioners, for inviting me today to talk about Downtown Mile. So just to sort of orient everyone, this is where Milton turns into Route 66 as our project area. For a frame of reference, Lone Tree is out here to the east.
Wait, Jason, we're not seeing you.
Picture of Craig right now.
Oh.
And as much as I adore that.
I did share screen, so I'm not sure why it's not popping up. Let me try again.
We could see your shared screen online.
I can't see it in here.
We're seeing it shared again now.
I wonder if,
Here, unplug your computer for a second.
okay, we're gonna try this.
I have a hammer.
Now try
I
again.
know where we get some pine needles.
Okay, so let me reshare. That work for you guys seeing my screen?
No, we're not.
Which doesn't make any sense.
I guess that's right.
I don't even know we can.
Is it because we're
Can you send us the presentation and we'll show it?
It's not a presentation, it's a Google
Oh,
Earth.
okay.
no,
All
it's
right,
not.
never mind.
Yeah, we're not sharing.
Never mind.
But I don't know why his is.
Close our eyes.
Imagine.
We rather be back.
And then we hear snore.
Well, we gotta hold hands. That's
Yeah.
the-
Where's the kumbaya? I was just understood.
Yeah.
I have to admit, this is one I don't know how to fix.
Could we go to just Google Maps, Craig, and then Jason can kind of tell you where to go, just so geographically we know where the projects are?
Yeah, we can do that.
It won't show the line work really, but at least it provides you the location of the undercrossings. Unless someone has a better idea.
No, that's brilliant, Christine. To Google Earth or Google Maps? What you prefer, Jason?
Yeah, either one will work. They both use the same underlying imagery.
Am I grabbing this image? Craig? Should you be doing it on this
We want to plug
computer?
into his.
I was gonna just.
Or
jump
mine.
in
Oh,
there.
okay.
We're just gonna plug in.
Yeah, whoever's sharing screen on the monitor, if they're on Teams, maybe that would be able to share screen too, but yeah, so the roadway improvements. Yeah, that works.
We've got $9 million. We can't buy Zoom.
Well said.
Okay. So are you guys seeing that?
Yep.
There we go.
Yeah, so this project is going to be focused. The heart of the project is right where Route 66 turns between Route 66 and Milton. So right through the corridor So if everyone's familiar with where ADOT just built that new bridge over Rio de Flag, that's our eastern touchdown point. And then we'll reconstruct Route 66 all the way to Phoenix Avenue to the south. So right around that curve, that whole stretch of road, an ADOT's facility will be reconstructed. Yes, exactly right
Phoenix
there.
Avenue right here.
Correct.
So
So
how is that-
currently, what's that?
Sorry, how is that being reconstructed?
So Route 66, so the current existing bridge right there has a 13.9 clearance. So one of the projects of the Rio de Flag project being done by the Army Corps, they have to build a concrete box culvert underneath BNSF. So to do that, there's a lot of discussions over the last 5-6 years of how that construction will occur. So this project sort of came around through that project is we have to rebuild this bridge, or one of the options we came to is rebuild this bridge to the north of the existing bridge, which is a 13.9 clearance. And while we're doing that, that allows us to shift the tracks to the north, rebuild the structure with the proper freeway clearance of 16.6, realign the two tracks to the north. This is actually in the original BNSF location before it was shifted south for where the bridge was built. So this is actually the historical location of BNSF. And then there will actually be enough room to put a third main to the south of where we're relocating it. So we'll be reconstructing that existing bridge at the same time providing enough vertical clearance to meet highway standards since it is an ADOT facility. So we'll be lowering Route 66 about 3 feet through this project, raising the tracks in this area just under a foot, and between those two operations getting 16-foot minimum vertical clearance. Sitgreaves in Santa Fe is that sort of 5-point intersection just to the northwest. That'll also be reconstructed as part of this project. We have 3 intersection alternatives right now. Sitgreaves, which goes north-south, that section right there will be eliminated. And a new intersection constructed where Santa Fe comes off Route 66 will be the primary intersection. This is being proposed to increase safety. It moves the motorists up towards the top of the hill, prevents that really sharp looking over your shoulder for oncoming traffic, and just cleans up that intersection from a safety perspective a little bit. And then the intersection of Santa Fe and Sitgreaves, we're considering a stop controlled intersection, a traffic intersection, a roundabout currently. Right now, the roundabout does not look very feasible from a geometric perspective, just because it has to get so large, it sort of takes that entire corner. But that new intersection will leave where that existing landscaping area is between Santa Fe, Sitgreaves. It sort of widens that area because the north-south Sitgreaves has gone away. It sort of leaves a big public area because the new pedestrian and sidewalk pathways are going to be reconstructed. So that's our first sort of public art area that sort of opens up as this project moves forward. You basically double the size of that existing pork chop, and it's no longer a pork chop. It's no longer bounded by roadway. It's actually just bounded by sidewalk.
Right.
So that's the first public art opportunity that we have as part of this project.
I do.
What?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So yeah, this becomes I'm sorry, every time I scroll over and I get the I do
Right,
wedding
this is very
boutique,
helpful
I
for me.
apologize. Yes. So this area expands and it's bounded by sidewalk because the sick graves will be gone right here. And so it'll be bounded by sidewalk rather than roadway.
Our next area.
It's
Oh,
also
go ahead.
not too far from our whole, city lawn over here, just pointing that out. All right.
Our next opportunity is where the new bridge was built. That's going to become a future foots connection. So this is just east. It's on the east end of the Route 66 where we tie in. So it's that new ADOT bridge. If you want to move your cursor to the up into the right, yeah, right there.
Yeah.
So there's plans for the Foots Trail to extend underneath that bridge north-south. And then we'll extend that Foots Trail connection even further south, mimicking sort of where the Corps Rio de Flag box is going to go. There'll also be a pedestrian bicycle underpath. So connecting a north-south multimodal connection between the downtown area and the future DCC.
The DCC here,
Yeah.
so it will go under the tracks,
Correct.
right?
Yep. So there's gonna be some approaches, a little bit limited because you do have the Rio to Flag along the north side of the tracks right there. So a little bit limited on the entryway, and the exit way does have a lot of parking lot area for the DCC. So the entryway approaches are a little bit limited in what's available, but the structure itself, right now, we're leaning towards having a concrete box. We are in a structure type alternatives analysis though, so there will be a couple different alternatives proposed. So it could be a box. We're also looking at maybe a 3-span structure to have a little bit more of an open feel through there. But we're really early on. We have not had discussions. We've had very preliminary discussions with BNSF, but they're going to be a major stakeholder in decision making. Cost will be something we analyze, but that's going to be a potential opportunity. As BNSF being a stakeholder, and this being a rail supporting structure, which means the rails are going on top, they do have requirements when it comes to attachments, painting, and other elements to their structures, because they do have to do biannual railroad inspections of all rail supporting structures. So we will be limited somewhat to what we can do to the box itself where there is rail on top. So I believe, Jan, we did send you those requirements, and what we will have to discuss any proposed artistic elements with BNSF as we move forward on this project.
Right, I'll give, Deepak, I'll give you a little bit of an overview of how we're gonna approach these different areas at the end of Jason's presentation.
Now moving further west, if we go over to Florence and Walnut, which is, you see Florence Street right on the left edge of your screen right there, and Walnut on the left edge of your screen. There will be another pedestrian cyclist underpass under BNSF. So, yeah, so there's Florence. So the end of Florence, and then underneath BNSF, there'll be another pedestrian crossing.
Oh.
Yeah, right there. So there,
Thank you.
yeah, there was a previous design that was a 3-span structure here, but we were reevaluating structure types. Again, looking at a box structure, I'm going to reevaluate the 3-span structure. This is a little bit more of an open area, so it does have potential to have approaches, especially coming in from the north, to have a little bit of maybe a feature coming in from the north. Now we do have BNSF right away coming through here, so that may limit some of that area, because I don't see the right of way line on this view, but it does look like there's some potential to do something on the north end here as sort of a entrance sort of art focus as we come in. That's sort of our third structure coming through.
Can I ask a question about the rebuilt bridge?
Mhm.
That's the underpass, right? That right now is pretty prominent where you coming up, Milton?
Correct. Yep.
So is there a chance to make that a really beautiful underpass?
So that is also a rail supporting structure. So we're not allowed to paint the superstructure. We're not allowed to put artwork or metal fabrication on the artwork. You might be able to talk them into some rustication on the barriers and some rustication on the abutments and piers, but the superstructure is going to have to be left pretty bare.
And that's BNSF's.
Yes, yeah, I think that that's one of the things that, you know, became very clear as I started investigating this, that the railroad restrictions are pretty strong. And obviously, Jason, you know, they're already going on design, so they've already been hired and they're already going forward, and it's a design year. So we don't really have an opportunity to do what we did at Berkeley with somebody in our design. There's just, we can't hold up the project. So we've been looking for opportunities, you know, because of the restrictions, where we can have an impact and we can kind of come in later. And I had a really, I will keep abreast of the design, because I've had a conversation with Jason and with the landscape architect about them possibly, even in those, you know, concrete culvert, maybe they can get some niches in. Maybe we can apply for some exemptions and do something like we did on the courthouse. You know, where they, we come in after, you know, like we came at the courthouse to come in after. Not exactly that, you know, ideal, but given the restrictions of the railroad, it may be what we can do. And then focusing on that entrance from La Plaza Vieja neighborhood for them with Mark Rivas and maybe, you know, something, you know, more historical interpretation there. And, you know, and then of course that expanded like landscape space. And again, we're not gonna have an artist designing with the landscape architect, but she's already shown me some images of how perhaps we can put some, even just some really interesting plinths in there to put sculpture on top of. You know, we are gonna have to, in this case, kind of come in after they design. But they're definitely willing to work with us and make these niches and spots so it doesn't look plopped, so that it looks integrated. And, you know, that's kind of gonna be the approach, but I know that bridge, but it's gonna have to be plain. It's gonna have to
But
be.
we could put something in front or around, right? We just can't touch the bridge structure itself.
Yes.
Yeah, we have retaining walls coming up to it too, which I think would be a good focal point. We got quite a bit of retaining walls, so that's an opportunity to use those as well.
Right. And so that's our approach, is I'm gonna tag along with the design team this year at these 3 spots and start working, you know, them into our 5-year plan. You know, especially excited about this space here and what it might become once they decide what the intersection configuration is gonna be. But yes, also those, you know, this connecting foots trail. You know, what can we do along it? You know, even if we can't do a lot inside the box, you know, maybe we can do a lot. And then, you know, I think this approach here, maybe we can do something interesting. It is great infrastructure. Just think of being able to actually go under and connect to these neighborhoods. I think this neighborhood's gonna be so excited, you know, once this is done. But we can't quite do our integrated approach. We're gonna have to kind of massage these nodes in, because of the nature of the project. But I still think, you know, there's a great deal that can be done within that framework.
I am in my head cursing BNSF though. I guess it's not just in my head right now. I mean, I wonder if there's any kind of national conversation with them. I mean, other cities have faced this, having to work with them. And if there's any kind of, yeah, anyone else, any other city that's had to negotiate with them and had more success than we are having.
I'm gonna let Christine comment on that because she's the one who deals with the railroad most directly.
Yeah, we'll definitely have the conversation with BNSF, you know, and try to do that integration of those aesthetics. But yeah, they are pretty stringent on their requirements. So.
Yeah, as long as I've been a community member, participant with politics, it's always just been one of those things where it's just not gonna happen. And then when we proposed to put public art there before, that was the door that slammed in our face. I mean, I really appreciate that question, and what we got out of that question was Jana's willingness to, you know, start putting the gloves on, maybe not strap them up yet, but she's definitely looking in the direction of pushing the needle in a direction that we're wanting it to go, and I appreciate that.
I'm with Sandra. Art on that bridge or near that bridge is an ideal opportunity.
I mean, such a.
Welcome to Flagstaff.
Yeah.
All right, so is this a good moment for your Reno sign, Commissioner Burrell?
There are a number of good places in there for that.
It's on this one, okay. I'm just going to, where it was that? It was here. So, let me see if I can bring this up. At last commission meeting, as part of this conversation, and I think you can see that the railroad is going to not allow us to use that bridge for this, but I think you wanted to have some kind of discussion of, you know, some kind of signature piece And I'm just bringing this up, because you mentioned this one in particular. Reno's biggest little city, and then this is it at night. So I just said, and I understand that there's been other conversations in the community about some kind of more signage. On the other hand, our city does have, it's kind of architecture, stone and curtain and lumber, kind of, obviously not at the scale, but I kind of recognizable signage that we've invested a lot in. So I got to put that out there, but Chris, I wanted you to have a chance to, talk about this and what your ideas were around it.
I'm looking for a there, and that Reno sign is the thing everyone who goes to Reno takes a picture in front of. Now, I'm not suggesting their design at all. It's very Reno design and good on them. But the concept of having a place like that, and whether it's, at that place where they're driving under the railroad tracks, or it's some place that goes through downtown as you're walking up Beaver or LaRue or San Francisco or something like that. People go, oh, I have arrived. And that's an important feeling. And it's big. And we've got a lot of other wonderful signage around town. Some of the other signage as you drive into the city is absolutely beautiful. My hat's off to whoever did that.
That's beautification.
Oh, it's wonderful. I love those signs. Yeah, so that's great. But they're not at a place where you're going to stop and take a picture. And this, if you had that walking right into downtown, I think with a very Flagstaff design, of course, but I think that'd be kind of cool.
I just want us to all remember that one of the first things that this commission did way back before I even knew about it. I think they did it. I don't even know what I know anymore. They took down all the billboards.
It's one of our beautiful signs.
They took down all the
Yeah, that's
billboards on
beautiful.
66.
Route 66.
Yes.
And they did that for a reason. And but things happen in cycles, and things can come back. Well, one thing that I, as a native, somebody who's been in Flagstaff his whole life, is when you could be like 60 miles away and you can see the peaks. And the closer you get, like the more you want to take a picture next to them. Sometimes I think that the best part of our job is to enhance the what God or whatever gave us, as art, and not to try to deter our eyes from those sacred mountains that keep people here, that have brought people here for generations.
Can I go back to BNSF for a minute? Because it does seem like just that, that overpass, right? I have in my head that there are railroad overpasses where it's not embossed, what's the reverse of embossed? Where it's
T-boss.
carved into the concrete. It just says Flagstaff, or has the mountains in the concrete. I mean, this is really impossible for us to.
So, I think Christine said she'd be happy to have a conversation with them again. I think what we've heard loud and clear is that this project will not be slowed down to negotiate a point like that. So if they are open to it and Christine is able to negotiate that, then awesome. But are we going to stop and try to figure out how to come to an agreement on that particular piece? Probably not. That's some of the direction that we've received.
And what I heard from staff, when Jenna was speaking, is that she'll use every opportunity that she can to do whatever she possibly can, even if it's an afterthought, maybe just putting the support system in line. It's just comforting. And I'm with you, Sandra. I was the one who wanted to beautify this one.
I think we all wanted to, right?
Right.
Exactly. It calls for it, but at the same time, I think that's, it's one of those things where perhaps Christine and Jason can have that conversation, and perhaps BNSF will change their mind, and that would be fantastic. I think what I'm just putting out there is that there are a lot of really important negotiation items that are a part of this, and that particular aesthetic is probably not going to stop or start the project.
I really appreciate that, but I also just want to push it a little bit.
Understood. Understood.
It's in the minutes.
I can, as I say.
And I do appreciate that,
Right.
they're here talking to us, having this conversation. and
No, I think
Keep working on it.
Jason's team, as we had the conversation and it was, kind of a, okay, what can we do? And, Christine and, the team's openness to try to find us some solutions so that we can enhance for the community, this important infrastructure, which just by its connectivity is going to be fabulous. I mean, this, the connectivity that's going to be created by these two pedestrian underpasses is just fantastic, right? Regardless,
Absolutely.
and I think the team, after talking with them, really knows that when you do an underpass, it has to feel safe for a person to enter, I want them to spend attention on lighting. That's probably the foremost thing, to be the kind of attractive lighting that, doesn't say blurry, doesn't say Soviet bunker, it does,
Right.
kind of
Do
thing
not
that,
pass.
and I think that this team wants that too. So I feel like we're gonna make something happen.
Just briefly, I feel like my statements might have been a little heavy-handed, and I didn't mean anything against you, Chris. What I'm trying to do is just make sure that you sell me an idea that I can believe in too. So I'm still open to your vision, and I really do appreciate that you're bringing new things to the table. But you're gonna have to fight me.
That's all right, I'll make the case, because I like augmenting the natural beauty too. I love that idea. And I think those designs are brilliant. I think those augment the natural beauty. I think they're beautiful, and I think a bigger version of that over at Downtown Street would be great.
Yeah.
So again, we did actually talk, if you go back to the Route 66 plan, there was something that was there's been two different times I've seen something of an attempt to do something like that, right? One is there was a sculpture called Rendezvous, I think I mentioned it in a previous meeting, where we looked for a location for a while downtown that would be sort of the iconic, not necessarily the Reno sign, but more like the Chicago bean, I think, that iconic sculpture that you'd be like, oh, meet me at the bean. Then the second one is there were these signposts that speaking is difficult. That some of this architecture is based on that actually, there's signs that showed Flagstaff, Williams, Grand Canyon. And the idea was to put a large one right out in front of where Barnes and Noble, which is now Goodwill, are going to be. And I think that was in some ways supposed to be like that spot. And that one never made it forward because ADOT I think they told us no like 7 times. So just, we can try. We negotiate. And we even tried, we tried going in a different route, and we'll probably try again. So I think the concept makes a ton of sense. The question is like where and how, because
Because Milton is controlled by ADOT, and everything, and then, there's private property, and it's, Route 66 is ADOT, so anything that goes over that has to go through them.
I would envision it somewhere in downtown where people are walking, so it's not Milton, right?
And
It's
yeah,
it's
maybe
one of
there's
those
somewhere we can
downtown
do that.
streets that you could put that on.
What about the City Hall lawn?
That'll be a very interesting, because obviously people will be driving by, and, what that project ends up being. And then also this adjoining pork chop, because again, everyone's gonna be rounding that corner. Have to see what's possible.
Or something where that natural grocers is. I mean, I don't, anything that would take the eye away from the area. I guess point is like, yeah, let's keep trying to figure out where that is. We've tried a couple times now. We can't seem to quite nail that one down. I think it's good.
Any final comments about the 5-year downtown mile beautification project?
I believe Commissioner Johnson has her hand up.
I do. Thank you. Yeah. I just wanted to ask in regards to having a Flagstaff sign somewhere downtown. I guess my concern is who are we doing that for? Like, who is the target audience for that? Because I mean, I'm a lifelong local here, and you know, I just feel that anyone who actually like lives and spends time in Flagstaff isn't going to need a sign, I guess, and that's going to be more like Instagram fodder for visitors, which is fine. But also just something that I want to, you know, put on the table is who are we doing that for?
Claire, so there is a system of beliefs and it is far from mine, trust me. But there's a concept out there that since, and this is, I don't think there's any hard numbers to this, but since our BBB tax is primarily paid for by visitation, to the tune of potentially, again, I'm making stuff up, 70%, 30%, totally making that up, but it's paid for by the visitors that come to Flagstaff. That, and this is usually for a different commission, but anyways, that because of that, we need to reinvest that in visitation. I'm not saying that that's right at all, but that's just a concept I wanted to float your way. And your question was excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, and I understand that. But also I think, you know, Flagstaff has a real problem with, you know, we don't have the infrastructure to support all of the visitors that we get. And anyone who's driven on Milton knows that. You know, we really don't have that infrastructure. So, you know, there is something to be said for investing in visitation, but then also, like, can Flagstaff support that as well? And I'm not saying, you know, the sign necessarily would make a big change in that, but you know, I just think that maybe supporting the community and community projects is something that I would be more interested in if we could find a way to make that more of a community minded thing than a, you know, you're in Flagstaff sort of thing, you know, is just my thought on that.
Amen.
Good point. Thank you. Let's move forward, please, to the two from items.
Okay, well, thank you, Christine Cameron. Thank you, Jason Kaflades, for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
City staff, you guys have any two from items?
We do not.
Sheriff Cruz, the only thing I have is to wish everybody a happy holiday. We will see you in January. Stay warm, stay safe as you drive around. Vice Mayor Sweet.
Just again, thank you for everything that you do and
Thank you. Any additional two from items from the commission?
Just briefly, so I've been a part of this media lab that we saw over at the Creative Flagstaff deal. You know, we had a chance to kind of peek in there and see what was going on. Well, I've been part of the classes that take place, and the last class is on this Saturday at 9:30 a.m. And I would really love to see you guys there because we are. I'm about to go drop a file on Thursday. So, I mean, you can move right into there. You can start doing some videography, some storytelling, some recording from the community. And I know you guys are all creative. So this Saturday at 9:30 till 12. And basically, we're just interviewing each other right now. So I want to interview. That's what I want to do. That's about it.
Thank you. Saturday at 9:30.
Creative Flagstaff.
Ganino Center for the Arts.
Yeah,
Okay.
CCA. Requests for future agenda items. Folks on the call, any requests for future agenda items?
I don't have anything.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Then I will adjourn the meeting at 6:01 and remind everybody that our next meeting is January 4th, 2023.
January 9th.
Oh, sorry, January 9th at 4 p.m. That's what I was looking at. here at City Hall or hybrid. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Have a great break.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Sorry about all our tech problems. Competent person at the helm.
Oh, no.